Book of John, please. I know that down just a little bit again. I'm echoing, still echoing. Okay, let's try that. Is that all right? Can y'all hear me? Everybody? Y'all? Over there in the corner? Way over there? Can y'all hear me over there? Cindy, can you hear me? Apparently you can. She looked when I said her name. So anyway. You always ask, can you hear? And people are looking at you like, no, we can't hear. So I realize that this is a terrible format to get you to talk a little bit because we're so scattered out and spread out and it's hard to hear one another. But I really do feel like it'd be beneficial if we started our class this morning to just considering this one particular question. And I want you to think about it for a minute and then tell me what you know, what you think. And the question is, why do you believe that Jesus is the Son of God? Now, I'm not looking for, superfied, rarefied theological answers. I just want to know, why do you believe that Jesus is the Son of God? No, what? I'm sorry, go ahead. Okay, all right. So part of that might go back to the way that you look at Scripture, at the Bible, that you accept the Bible as a book from God or a special revelation, something that tells you that Jesus is the Son of God. And so you accept the words of Scripture. Okay, all right. Do what?
Through faith.
Through faith. Okay. What can you expand on that? I mean, what do you mean when you say through faith?
Taking historical data that matches with what the Bible has to say as one part.
Okay.
Then realizing that there's holes in there, but then also realizing that it's evident that there is a supreme being.
Okay.
On that deal. So just by patchwork of taking known entities or known statements and then realizing that there is a power out there and that the people who were there who witnessed it and people coming together and being able to write the Bible that's God inspired over hundreds of years.
Okay.
Everything's things that way.
All right. Okay. So you're adding to what Ken said over here about veracity, about the truth of the Bible and the reasons why you accept that testimony that Jesus is somebody special. All right? Yeah, Tommy?
Well, I was blessed to have believing parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents.
Okay.
Because I don't know, and that's been a progressive thing. I've, at a certain point, passed the place where I didn't have my parents' faith anymore. I had my own. But had I not had the faith and the opportunity and the blessing to be taught by godly Christian parents, I honestly don't know what I would believe right now.
Okay.
Because that's where it started with people being surrounded by people who believed and by churches believed. However strong or weak it was, there were people who believed it.
All right. I think that was one of the things that I was going to say was I was raised this way. I mean, I was raised to believe. My parents thought it was important, and they drummed it into me that Jesus is somebody special, and they taught me. Now, they weren't always consistent about the way that they understood grace and works, and they were kind of that old-fashioned legalistic kind of guy that you've got to work your way into heaven. But they did know Jesus, and they taught me about Jesus, and a lot of people that I respect taught me about Jesus. And so I kind of absorbed the idea that Jesus is the Son of God. And as time went on, I've added to that. It's become more sophisticated in why I believe Jesus is the Son of God. But I think it's important that it's the people that the church. I mean, being a part of the church just makes a difference in the fact that you believe that Jesus is the Son of God. What else? Anybody else have any? Yeah, Charles?
Many places in the Bible that backs up one verse after another verse,
Okay.
one right after the other. So many places that it backs it up.
Okay. All right. Consistency of Scripture. We're talking about why do you personally believe that Jesus is the Son of God? So everybody that came in a little bit later will know what we're talking about. Anybody want to add? Yeah, Joe. Joe, you're not Joella. You're Alan. Do what? I'm sorry.
I don't believe in the Big Bang Theory. I think there's a higher intelligence behind the creation of everything.
Okay.
And that, if you study it, then you will believe, I think, that higher intelligence becomes God. And therefore, you believe His Word all the way through the Old Testament,
Okay.
New Testament, and so on and so forth.
All right. Now, we've talked a lot about the test. What is it specifically about Jesus that would cause you to believe He's the Son of God? I mean, or do we?
Resurrection.
I'm sorry? Resurrection. All right. Okay, resurrection. Pretty big deal. And that ties into testimony, right? How many of you were there the day Jesus was resurrected? Shook His hand, put your hand in His side, all that kind of stuff. Hardly any of us. There are a few of us that are probably that old. The ones that rode the dinosaur to and got on the ark, and sailed with Noah and all that kind of stuff. But that's testimony. I mean, we're kind of piggybacking on the experience of other people. We're hearing what other people have to say, but we believe their testimony is consistent and it's true, and we believe that Jesus was raised from the dead. How many people do you know that were raised from the dead the way Jesus was? Now, I know there were several. Okay, you can think of, let's see, there was Elisha raised a kid from the dead. Elijah raised somebody from the dead. Jesus raised a few people from the dead in his lifetime. Paul raised some people. Peter raised Dorcas from the dead. But that's a different kind of raising from the dead. That's somebody standing there saying, okay, come back alive. It's a resuscitation. What happened to all those people who were resurrected, who were raised from the dead?
Those who were awoken died again.
Okay, they all died again. Yeah, it's not like they were suddenly, put beyond death. What happened when Jesus was raised? He was resurrected. He lives forever. He is never going to die again. I mean, He has defeated death. That's a different kind of resurrection. And so we understand Jesus to be in a whole different category of people because He is now resurrected. What else about Jesus would cause you to believe He's the Son of God?
All the miracles. I can't imagine. I mean, even one miracle would have made me believe. I don't
Okay.
take much for me. If I saw somebody with leprosy and all of a sudden it was gone, or somebody blind that I'd known for my whole life and they could see, that would be super easy for me. Like, okay,
Okay.
I believe.
All right. Now, healings happen a lot, right? I mean, they happen all the time. You talk to people that say, I went to the doctor and they found a mass of cancer in my body and I went back and it's gone. And so, I mean, healings happen, right? Things like that happen. But there's a difference between that happening and for me to walk up to Charles, I'm sorry, boy, my brain is going crazy. But for me to walk up to him and shake his hand and say, look, I can tell you're just covered. You're not. You're just covered with leprosy. And at my word, I'm telling you, you be healed. And the leprosy to clear up, right? That's a whole different thing. That's a whole different category. Jesus does that apparently over and over and over again, not as a way of showing off, but as a way of that's just the kind of power He has. When He speaks something, it happens. And so we believe that Jesus is somebody different, somebody on a whole order of the world different than what we normally encounter with people. And so we connect that with the idea that Jesus is from God. He is the Son of God, and therefore we have to listen to Him. I mean, what He teaches us, what He tells us is true because of who He is. It's not true because He does miracles, but it's true because of who he is. His miracles, those signs tell us something about Jesus that tells us he is somebody that has authority, that he has power, he has an existence that we don't know about. Remember when Nicodemus comes to Jesus, and Nicodemus starts questioning Jesus, and he wants to argue with him a little bit, and Jesus finally says to him, look, I came from heaven. I mean, you've already told me that you think I'm a teacher from God. I came from heaven, and I'm telling you what I heard in the presence of my Father, and I'm telling you what my Father told me to tell you, and you still won't believe it? You know, there is that kind of thing going on with Jesus. John is real big on signs. Let's go to, let's read John. I want to read it first, and then we're going to go back and pick this thing to pieces. John 4, verse 46. And we're going to read down through verse 54, which is the end of the chapter in John 4. Now, I know this particular episode in John 4 doesn't really resonate with us as much. What happens in John 4 that we really get hung up on? The woman in Samaria, right? First part of John 4. We hear that discussion, and we forget to read the rest of the chapter sometimes. So here's the rest of the chapter. Beginning in verse 46. And I can't read it because I don't have my glasses on. Once more he visited Cana in Galilee, where he had turned the water into wine. And there was a certain royal official whose son lay sick at Capernaum. When this man heard that Jesus had arrived in Galilee from Judea, he went to him and begged him to come and heal his son, who was close to death. Unless you people see signs and wonders, Jesus told him, you'll never believe. The royal official said, Sir, come down before my child dies. Go, Jesus replied, your son will live. The man took Jesus at his word and departed. While he was still on the way, his servants met him with the news that his boy was living. When he inquired as to the time when his son got better, they said to him, yesterday at 1 PM, the fever left him. Then the father realized that this was the exact time at which Jesus had said to him, your son will live. So he and his whole household believed. This was the second sign Jesus performed after coming from Judea to Galilee. Now we're going to talk for a little while here about signs, this idea of signs. This was the second sign Jesus performed after coming from Judea to Galilee. John is big on signs. Let your fingers do some walking here. Let's go to John 2, verse 11. We're going to look at some verses and probably just read some of these verses. John chapter 2, Jesus goes to a wedding in Cana. He turns water into wine. Verse 11. What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Then go to verse 18 of that same chapter, where Jesus has cleared the temple courts of the money changers and get out of here, stop turning my Father's house into a market. Verse 18, the Jews then responded to him, what sign can you show us to prove your authority to do all this? So they're interested in a sign of his authority. What can you show us that tells us that you have the personal authority to cleanse the temple like this? Look at verse 23. Now while he was in Jerusalem at the Passover festival, many people saw the signs he was performing and believed in his name. So signs are a big deal. Look at John 3 and verse 2. Nicodemus comes to Jesus and says to him, Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher who has come from God, for no one could perform the signs you are doing if God were not with him. So in some sense for Nicodemus, those signs have validated the fact that Jesus is a teacher who knows God's mind, heart, will, whatever it is. Now, skip over a couple of chapters to John 6. I'll read verse 1, but verse 2 is where I want to go. Sometime after this, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee, that is the Sea of Tiberias, and a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs he had performed by healing the sick. So the signs, they're following Jesus because of the signs. Now, as you read chapter 6, you find out that they don't really believe in Jesus about the signs. It's just that the signs are kind of something beneficial, that, you know, if somebody can heal the sick, I want to hang around that guy. And then I don't have to go to the heart doctor every 2 weeks until I get sick of seeing the poor guy, you know, and taking every test I can. He just heals me and it's over with, and we're through. All right, look at John 6 and verse 14. Jesus feeds the 5,000. And Jesus, let's see, not verse 14, did I say 15? Verse 14, after the people saw the sign Jesus performed, they began to say, surely this is the prophet who's come into the world. So there is a sign, something about what Jesus has done in feeding the 5,000 is a sign to them that he is this prophet who was supposed to come into the world. And to them, the prophet ushers in the Messiah. You know, this is the coming of finally of the last days, and God rescues his people. Go down to verse 26. Jesus gets into a big fuss with these guys over the significance of his feeding sign in the first part of the chapter. And Jesus says to them, Jesus answered, very truly I tell you, you're looking for me, not because you saw the signs I performed, but because you ate the loaves and had your fill. And I can hear them respond, well, you know, yeah, but that's the sign. We're here because you can feed us. And, you know, we'll vote for anybody if he'll feed us, right? And so that's kind of what Jesus is running into. John 7 and verse 31. Now, we skipped over John 4, you know, the sign that in John 4 that we've read already. But look at John 7, verse 31. Still, many in the crowd believed in him. They said, when the Messiah comes, will he perform more signs than this man? Now, think about what they said there for just a second, and think about how crazy that sounds. They're not saying, maybe he's the Messiah. What they're saying is, even the Messiah is not going to do what this guy did. I mean, he's almost greater than the Messiah. They see the signs and they recognize the greatness of the signs and how amazing those things are, but they refuse to believe that Jesus is anything other than just a very talented, very blessed human being. Just an ordinary man who has something special going on. Look at 9. 9 is all about Jesus healing a man born blind. Now, he's not a man who went blind, and so Jesus gave him the right medicine and made him well. This is a man born blind, and Jesus heals him of his blindness. Verse 31, the man who's been healed has been answering the critics of Jesus who are trying to say Jesus cannot be from God because, number one, he healed you on the Sabbath day. And we just don't do that. I mean, godly people would not do anything on the Sabbath day. Verse 31, we know that God, I'm sorry, that's the wrong verse. Where are we at? 9:16. Let me back up here. The Pharisees are complaining about Jesus. This man is not from God, for he doesn't keep the Sabbath. That's verse 16. But the last half of verse 16 says, but others said, how can a sinner perform such signs? So they were divided. Now, to the Pharisees, that wasn't a sign. What Jesus did was a sign that he was on Satan's side. To everybody else, they're going, this is a good thing. He performed a great sign. I mean, how can this guy be a sinner the way you're talking about if he does such great miracles or such great, well, not miracles, but such great signs? Look at chapter 10 and verse 41. Many people came to him. They said, though John never performed a sign, all that John said about this man was true. What does that verse tell you about what they thought signs were for? What's a sign for, according to them? Do what? Okay, verifies his authority, verifies the truthfulness. I mean, we know John was true because he did these great signs from God. Well, John the Baptist didn't do any signs at all, but we know he told the truth. So signs, in some senses, signs are for proving that you're telling the truth. Okay? And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get on into this. John 11 and verse 47. Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead. Some people go and tell the Pharisees what's going on. Verse 47, then the chief priests and the Pharisees called a meeting of the Sanhedrin. What are we accomplishing, they asked. Here is this man performing many signs. What are the Pharisees who do not believe in, they're opposed to Jesus. They're going to kill Jesus. What do they believe about, what do they know about Jesus? One thing they know. He's doing signs, whatever that means. Chapter 12, verse 18. Many people, because they had heard that he had performed this sign, that is, raising Lazarus, went out to meet him. I mean, people are attracted to Jesus because he's done this great sign of raising Lazarus from the dead. Down to verse 37. Even after Jesus had performed so many signs in their presence, they still would not believe in him. So signs are powerful, signs are they're appealing, but they are not necessarily compelling. You can see a sign, recognize it as a sign, and still not believe in Jesus. Okay? Verse 30 of John 20. Generally considered to be the preliminary purpose statement of John. Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book, but these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. All right, so what's the point of signs there? What are signs meant to do? Cause you to believe in Jesus so that you can have life, right? Okay, all right. Now here's the question. We've read all this stuff about signs. What is a sign?
Well, in one place there's the categorization of signs, wonders, and mighty deeds.
Okay.
I suppose that they all fit the same category, but they're different expressions of what that means. Something out of the ordinary, extraordinary, more than we understand or believe.
Oh, okay. All right. We got to make it extraordinary, something. Everybody look right back there and look at right up there. What is that? It's a sign. All right. What does it say? It says exit. Why is it there? It's nice to know. There's an exit. Listen, if this place was on fire and it was burning up these pews real fast, it would be really nice to know that there's the exit and there is a sign that says exit. What is that sign there for? What is the purpose of that sign? It's to point you towards something, to say, this, if this situation arises, go here. You know, you can get out here. A sign of any kind is like that. A sign points, that sign by itself, information. It's good information to know, right? But it's kind of meaningless information. That's exit. Now, if you're looking for the bathroom and you know the bathroom's not in here, and I'm going to tell you, okay, right outside there's a sign that says restroom. And you're going to be interested in that, right? Because you've got to get there pretty quick. And so you follow the sign. A sign points beyond itself to some deeper meaning than just the sign itself has. There's a lot going on with that sign in different situations. That particular sign has a lot going for it when you're in danger and you need to get outside. If there's a guy shooting up this auditorium, you want to know where the exit is. And that sign means something. And that's the way it is. These actions of Jesus, and not always miraculous actions necessarily, But these actions of Jesus are pointing towards something bigger and deeper than just what the action is all about, deeper than a healing. There is something, we start perking up and saying there's something. Even these people that deny that Jesus is the Son of God or Jesus is the Messiah, they're saying these signs, listen, there's something different about this guy. There's something that we can't figure out about this character because he does things that we just don't know what's going on. But for us, those of us who believe, those for whom the signs are fairly persuasive, those signs mean something about the person of Jesus. And so signs are really big deals. But there are a lot of ins and outs of all of these signs. Signs, first of all, seem to be done in the ordinary course of Jesus' activity. You don't see Jesus whipping up a crowd, putting out a tent, playing loud music, putting signs all over town, and everybody comes in, and you're going to have a healing service, right? And Jesus never does that. Jesus just happens to be going along, and somebody comes up and grabs him and says, look, my son is dying. I need you to come and heal him. I know you can heal him. I've seen the sign. I've seen what you've done before. You can do it this time. Come and heal my son. And so these signs are done not as a result of some evangelistic meeting where Jesus does a sign, where Jesus speaks and then does some sort of sign to authenticate what he said. You don't see it happen that way. In John, signs happen first and then Jesus speaks. And the signs tell us this guy's worth paying attention to, and now he speaks. We better listen to what he says. We better commit to what he says. So signs are kind of a pre thing that goes with, watch what happens in this. Pay attention to what happens with this guy when he comes to get Jesus to heal his son. And you'll see that very thing. Sign speaks. The Word of God is the primary thing. Look at John 3 and verse 2 again. Go back to where Nicodemus shows up. And he says to him, oh, boy, I'm starting to love computers more and more. Rabbi, we know that you're a teacher who has come from God, for no one could perform the signs you're doing if God were not with him. Those signs have told us something about you, and have shown me that you are a teacher from God. Now, whether Nicodemus is sincere about that, who knows? Whether he's puzzled by that, who knows? You can tell he's having trouble listening to Jesus. He thinks he's kind of equal to Jesus, that I too am a teacher of the people, and so I can tell you what you ought to say and ought not to say. Well, but anyway, it's the signs that Jesus is doing that has caught his attention and told him, this guy's somebody I need to go talk to. This guy is somebody who knows God in a special, unique way. Signs, this is a fellow named Kustenberger wrote this, and I copied it, so here are her signs. Signs, with their accompanying symbolism, point to God's glory displayed in Jesus, thus revealing Jesus as God's authentic representative. That's what I've said over and over and over again, okay? The signs are pointing to Jesus as being God's special representative, somebody who has come from God. So you have in John 2:11, Jesus did the first sign in Cana of Galilee and manifested his glory. He showed the glory of God in him. There was something. Now, what's odd about that is you think he made a bunch of wine for a bunch of half-drunk people at a little party, at a little wedding celebration in Galilee, and they call that manifesting God's glory. Already you can start telling, there's something about this sign that's a lot deeper than just Jesus keeping a party going on for a while. There is something about who God is and what God stands for and all this kind of stuff built into that. We're not going to go into that particularly. 2:18, Jesus goes to Jerusalem and he, goes to Jerusalem and he cleanses the temple, and the rulers, the leaders come and confront him and say, what sign will you do to show that you have the authority to do this? Clearly, these leaders are expecting some sort of sign, some big thing that would tell them when this guy has the right to do what he's doing. So they want to certify that Jesus has God's authority. Now, we do that all the time with people, just on a real more basic level. I mean, if Garrett's going to preach to you this morning, and one of the things we're going to tell you is Garrett is going to Sunset International Bible Institute to learn. You're going to learn to be a preacher. What are you learning to do? He wants to be a preacher, okay? But just by the fact that I said Garrett goes to Sunset International Bible Institute, what does that tell you? He's probably okay. Okay? Now, I guarantee that doesn't prove everything. But what that says is he's been well taught. He's been instructed in what we believe, and he has. When he tells us something, we at least ought to evaluate it as being true. Assume it's true, unless we can prove it false in some way for some reason. But that's kind of the sign. That fact that he's been to Sunset, that he's attending now Sunset Bible Institute, is kind of a sign to us. Well, I mean, magnify that. I'm not trying to say Jesus' signs were just minuscule, out of the way things like that. But I mean, here are these guys asking Jesus, you're going to certify your authority. I mean, you've kicked all these guys out of the temple. You act like you're the God that runs the temple. Tell me why you have that right. And Jesus said, okay, I will. Destroy this temple and I'll raise it in 3 days. Boy, that'd be a sign, wouldn't it? Taking 46 years to build this temple and you're going to raise it in 3 days? And then we realize, John says, but he wasn't talking about the temple. He was talking about his body. He was talking about himself. Kill me and I'll be raised in 3 days. That's the sign that I have the authority to do this. Well, what was it? Was it Joel? Who was it said first? Resurrection. Over here a while ago when we said, how do you know Jesus, Son of God? Alan? Okay. So there you go. There's that one big certifying sign. Look at John 10, verse 41. And again, I'm repeating myself here, but these people all listen to Jesus. They come to Jesus and they say, though John never performed a sign, all that John said about this man was true. They expect a sign of some sort to verify the claims of the teachers. That teachers are claiming that they have some insight into God. See, that's what we do. I mean, I do that all the time. I've been to New Mexico State University. I've been to New Mexico State. I've been to Eastern New Mexico University. I've been to University of Wyoming in Laramie. I have been to ACU for a long time. ACU owns 3/4 of me. And so when I start dragging that stuff out, you go in my office. Okay, let me start over again. You come into my office and I say, I am a marriage counselor. What do you look for first? You're looking for that certificate on the wall that says, this guy's been trained in that and he knows what he's talking about. Or, we use some other kind of, I am not, by the way, a marriage counselor. Far from it. But you start, I went to the doctor's office the other day. I'm seeing a cardiologist now. And Dr. Hernandez came in and I said, where's your certificate? I want to read your certificate. Kind of made him mad, but I wanted to see where he went to school. But he has that back in his own office, and I wanted to tell him, I believe I'd put that in every examination room you had around here. This guy knows what he's talking about. If some of you may have seen the Facebook post when they told me you're going to go see Dr. Hernandez, I immediately wrote on Facebook, tell me what you know about Dr. Hernandez. It was interesting. People who like Dr. Hernandez really like him, and people who don't like Dr. Hernandez really don't like him. So it's kind of like preaching, you kind of get into that kind of situation. So there are those signs all the time that go on. Here is what's interesting, is that a sign, you can be impressed by the sign and still not be impressed by the one who does the sign. Look at John 9 and verse 16. Jesus has healed the blind man. Some of the Pharisees said, this man's not from God, for he doesn't keep the Sabbath. But others asked, how can a sinner perform such signs? So they were divided. The Pharisees see what he's done, and they admit he healed a man blind from birth, and yet they want to insist that Jesus is a sinner. The sign to them didn't prove anything except he's a bad guy. John 11. We already read this one as well, too, but we're going to look at it a little bit closer. John 11, verse 47. The chief priests and the Pharisees called a meeting of Sanhedrin because all these people are following Jesus. I mean, Jesus is he's way up in the popularity polls. What are we accomplishing, they asked. Here is this man performing many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and then the Romans will come and take away both our temple and our nation. So what are they concerned about? Jesus is going to start a revolution, and then the Romans are going to come in and whip us to pieces, and we're not going to have anything left. Then one of them, verse 49, one of them named Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, spoke up. You know nothing at all. You do not realize that it is better for you that one man die for the people than that the whole nation perish. And John takes that and says, that's a prophecy. He didn't realize it, but that's a prophecy, because that has a double meaning. On the one hand, the man needs to die to get out of the way so that the Romans don't come and kill us all. But John says, actually what it meant was Jesus is going to die for the salvation of his people. But see how that sign works? I mean, the sign, they recognize what he did, but they refuse to accept Jesus, to second Jesus. Look at John 12 now. We got to see what time it is. We're going to hurry. John 12 and verse 37. Even after Jesus had performed so many signs in their presence, they still would not believe in him. This was to fulfill the word of Isaiah the prophet, Lord, who's believed our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For this reason they could not believe, because as Isaiah says elsewhere, he has blinded their eyes and hardened their hearts, so they can neither see with their eyes nor understand with their hearts, nor turn, and I would heal them. Isaiah said this because he saw Jesus' glory and spoke about him. Yet at the same time, many even among the leaders believed in him. But because of the Pharisees, they would not openly acknowledge their faith for fear they would be put out of the synagogue, for they loved human praise more than praise from God. Now, a lot of that particular episode in there in John 12, it reflects John's reading of Isaiah, and we don't have time to go into all of that about the nature of the Son of Man must be lifted up. That comes out of Isaiah. But here is John saying, okay, the fact that these people see all these signs and yet don't pay attention to them the way they should is just a fulfillment of Isaiah's prophecy. And it is not, Isaiah is not saying, or John is not saying, that they have been prevented from believing, that somehow God has decided he doesn't want them to believe, and so he's just decided in his own inscrutable will that they are not going to believe. But what you get in Isaiah, out of that reading in Isaiah, is here are these signs, and they are so forceful and so impressive that they just kind of blind you. You know, these guys look at those signs and they go blind. It's like looking at the sun. The sun has this beauty to it, but the sun's a bad thing when you look at it, and it blinds you. You know, if you're looking at the sun because of the sunsets or because of, there's a lot of good things about it, but it'll blind you. Signs dazzle their eyes into blindness, and sins harden their hearts rather than soften them. You know, I was in a fight with my wife the other day, and I know you guys don't believe that my wife and I ever would disagree about much of anything, but we were in this pretty heated discussion, and she was getting, that hardly ever raises her voice and gets louder and louder and louder, but she was starting to raise her voice, and I was starting to respond to her in kind. Actually, I was probably leading her in kind, but at any rate, here we are, we're going, and this thing is elevated. You know what she did? She lowered her voice and said, now, we're going to have to talk about this, and we're going to have to be reasonable here. And I was so mad, I jumped up and slammed the door and walked out. Now, her sign was, look, I want to lower the temperature, and I want to make this okay. But what did it do? Hardened my heart. Now, it hardened my heart because I know that's the way she treats children. Whenever she's trying to get them to calm down, she lowers her voice, and so I'm being treated like a child, and so I responded in kind. I gathered up my adult self and acted like a child, But nevertheless, do you see what's going on here with these Jews? God is appealing to them on the basis of these wonderful signs. Jesus is doing good things, and they want to kill him. I mean, it doesn't help them at all. It just makes them angrier. It makes them more alienated from God. So, signs aren't always convincing, compelling, proof of anything. Signs are laid out there to say, look, I'm making you an offer. This is obviously I'm somebody different. What are you going to do with it now? And it's always kicked back in our court. So we want to go back to John. As a matter of fact, there are other motives. Verse 43, they loved human praise more than praise from God. There's the issue. That's John's real problem right there. Or that's what John says their real problem is. All right, let's go back to John 4, and let's look real quickly at the signs. First of all, look at John 4, verse 48. Unless you people see signs and wonders. This fella, Jesus has gone to Cana, royal official, pretty high up in the hierarchy. People are going to respond to him. You want to curry favor with those royal officials. His son is lying sick. He hears that Jesus arrives, go to him, begs him to heal his son, and Jesus responds, unless you people see signs and wonders, you will never believe. What do you make out of that? How do you hear that? Is that a positive or negative statement? What's Jesus telling this guy? Now, to me, when I first read that, I'm sorry, go ahead. Okay. Okay. All right. So he's appealing to them to get their mind straight and to think about things. When I read this, when I just make a surface reading of this, I kind of have a bad impression of Jesus. I mean, we're going to talk about signs and what a wonderful guy Jesus is. I'm thinking, man, he's touchy. You people are always bugging me for signs, always coming around looking for a sign. You don't even believe in me, and you're just looking for a sign. And I'm thinking, well, I've been there too, But I think in some senses, Jesus is John, let me put it this way. John has this tendency in his writing to have people respond on surface things. Nicodemus comes to Jesus and said, you're a teacher come from God. And Jesus says, you must be born again, or you must be born from above. That word has a double meaning to it. And what's Nicodemus' response? You mean I got to crawl back inside my mom and be born again? No, stupid. That's the dumbest thing I ever heard. How can you even respond that way? But that's the way people respond to Jesus a lot of times. And so here is this man coming to Jesus looking for help, and Jesus responds to him, first of all, on the level of that miraculous power. All you people are looking for is big deeds. It may mean you don't ever need me unless you need me. You never pay attention to me. You don't try to live my life. Live the life that I say. You don't care about me until you need something. Have you ever had a friend like that? Friend doesn't care a thing about you until he needs something, and he says, hey, can you loan me $10? What kind of friend is that? Not a friend at all, right? You run the guy off and say, don't come to me anymore. Well, that's kind of, you get that from, these people have no use for Jesus until they're desperate, and then suddenly they come to Jesus, and Jesus said, you know what? Your belief in me is just fake because you never really commit to me until you need something from me, and then here you are. I remember a guy was dying one time, and he had promised to buy a refrigerator for the Lovington church and put in their fellowship hall, and he was kind of dragging his feet because he realized that a refrigerator was going to cost some money, and he didn't want to pay it. And he got sick and about ready to die, and one of the elders went to him and said, you're going to die if you don't donate that refrigerator. And he donated it the next hour. I mean, it was so fast. He needed Jesus right then. So he's ready for that miracle to happen. It could be that people just aren't making up their minds about God. Remember in Exodus 17, you have this long list of things that are going on in the desert. They cross the Red Sea, and they get over across the Red Sea, and they run out of water. And they start grumbling and complaining and moaning, and God gives them water. And then they're groaning and complaining because they don't have any food, and God gives them manna. And then they start groaning and complaining because they don't have any water again. And so you get down to Exodus 17, and you have this back and forth thing going on with these Israelites. And Moses names this place Massah. Because he says they were grumbling and saying, is God among us or not? They contended with God. And so what it is they just go back and forth. They can never make up their mind. Satan comes to Jesus and says, jump off the temple. Because you never know. I mean, you may get in a situation and you're expecting God to take care of you and God doesn't catch you. But jump off the temple and see if he will. And Jesus said, don't be ridiculous. I know God will take care of me. That's the way he answers that. See, here they are. They're not really sure. We have to see one more miracle. Just give us a miracle and then we'll. Give us a miracle and then we'll. I hear Moses at the foot of Mount Sinai, the burning bush. And Moses says, what's the proof that you're going to do all of this through me? And God said, when you come back here and worship me on this mountain after it's all over with, that'll be the proof. And I'm going, wow, some proof. You know, I mean, that after it's all done and said, of course. But that's the sign. That's what Jesus offers as a sign. So these people are really, I mean, this. But how does this royal official respond to Jesus when he says, all you ever want is a big sign? How does he respond? My son's dying. And if you don't do something, he's going to die. Please say the word. Just do something to make him live. And so he does. And interestingly enough, in that verse 40, what is it? Verse 50. That's translated. The NIV and probably every other version translates that your son will live. That's a future. That's not a future tense in Greek. It's a present tense. Your son lives. And the idea of that, I think, is back in John 1, verse 4. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was life. In him was life, and that life was the light of men. And so you have Jesus being life. Just because, and then you have the fellow saying, back up just a little bit, the next thing that's said in verse 50, the man believed the word which Jesus spoke to him, and he went away. It's the word of Jesus that's important. In the beginning was the word, that word was life, Jesus speaks life, and this fellow agrees with it. So there is that miracle that happens there, but it really tells you something about Jesus, the authority of his word, and the fact that his word is a big deal and needs to be clung to. And the man's response then is belief. He goes back home. They say, your son got better at 1 o'clock yesterday. And he thought, 1 o'clock? That's when Jesus told me that he was going to live. And sure enough, so this fellow believes with all of his house. So really, I guess the big point about that sign is, what do you think about Jesus? You know, what does that sign tell you about Jesus? And what does that say to you about your commitment to Jesus? Let's pray, please. Holy Father, may we believe. May the great things that you do, even today in our lives, cause us to draw closer to you and not to be hard-hearted and turn away. Father, bless us. And we pray it in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you very much.